What is up, everyone, and thank you for tuning into the Creative Hunter podcast. This is your host, as always, Logan Romney. First of all, thank you guys for all the support. We are on episode 21 right now, so 20 episodes coming out every week. I missed 1 week, and other than that 1 week, we've got 20 weeks out, 20 episodes. So far, I've been just loving it. It's been really fun. It's been a little bit of work. I just having to coordinate what time guests are coming on and making sure that I have a podcast ready to come out every week. And since I've just got back from a hunt, I had to record a couple podcasts in 1 week to make sure that I had some stuff coming out while I was out on a hunt. So it's been awesome, been fun, been some just logistics and just really cool. I think one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast is I get to reach out to guys that I followed for a long time and that I know and that have been in the industry for a lot longer than I have, and I get to have a good excuse to get to know them and just reach out, ask them to be on the podcast. And a lot of my guests recently are guys that I've never met before, but I've seen their stuff. I know that they have good content, and I reached out, and now I'm buddies with them. So it's been really cool. I've got some good opportunities that have come up because of the podcast already, even though it's not a very big podcast. I don't have a ton of followers or listeners on each episode, but it's improved my life and my career drastically already. So really excited. We're not stopping anytime soon. We're going to keep up with it, and definitely let me know, DM me, put a comment on the video, whatever. If there's people you want to hear from that you think would be good on this podcast and kind of fit the vibe and the story behind this podcast. And let me know if you have any improvements or things you want to hear about. And I will definitely check that stuff out, and if it's something that's right up the alley, I will either reach out to someone who you suggest to be on the podcast, or I'll talk about something that you guys want to hear about. So as far as this podcast goes, like I said, I just got back from a hunt. It was my own hunt, actually. It's a tag that I get every year. It's a high country archery mule deer hunt, and I had about 9 days planned to be on the mountain from opening day, 9 days straight to be up there. I did this hunt last year and filmed it. Kobe Owens, Kincaid, Smeltzer were my camera guys last year, and we had an awesome hunt, but we never killed anything. We saw a lot of deer, put on a few stalks, and it just didn't quite work out. Which is just kind of how archery hunting goes sometimes, but not really good enough for me. I'm honestly, I want to be good enough to the point where I can go and kill on almost any hunt. This hunt that I just got off of, I did kill a buck, and it was my first archery animal I've ever harvested, and it was a nice buck. I'm gonna kind of get into the story about it. And same hunt that we were on last year. I just went out with just some experience from last year's hunt and willing to just put in the time this year again and just go hard. So last year we went out, I hunted for over 14 days, didn't kill a buck. I put on a few stalks and just didn't quite get it done. This year I had actually more days planned than I needed to, so I had about 20 days if I wanted to hunt, but I had 9 days where I had a cameraman come out, and Jamin Davis was my cameraman. He came out to film it for me. He had 9 days to come film the hunt, and I figured if we didn't get it done in 9 days, I'm still gonna hunt for a few days. I'm just gonna film it myself. So Jamin and we got out on the hunt. And just so you guys know, this is not an easy hunt by any means. Last year, the success rate for the hunt, as I was looking on go hunt and stuff, the success rate was less than 5% of people harvested an animal on last year's hunt. So crazy. So 4% success rate, and not a lot of people harvested a buck. There's tons of deer in here. It's just hard to get on them and hard to find them. And there is a lot of people that hunt this area. One of the issues we ran into last year is just a lot of people. There were people, we were finding like nice bucks in basins, and then people would walk up the bottom of the basin. We'd be up camped on top, like watching these bucks from a distance away. People would walk up the basin and have no clue that the deer were in there and just blow the deer out. Happened to us multiple times, and just a bummer. But it is what it is. It's public land hunting, and you just gotta sometimes deal with what you got. So this year I decided to try some new spots. E-scouted a bunch of areas. I found an area that's deep, that's hard to get to. There's no trails to get into it. It's almost as deep as you can get in this unit that we're hunting. And Jamin and I packed in there the day before the opener, and we were stoked. We were ready. I picked him up from the airport. We got in and started hiking. I think we were hiking around like 4:30. Got up. By the time we got to where we were camping, it was well past dark. So we took a long time to get in there. We had a lot of water because there's no water access up where this area is, and we just packed everything up the mountain. And we were planning on being there for the full 9 days if we had to without coming down. I made a little mistake. I only packed 6 days of food because I thought if this area doesn't work out within 6 days, we'll probably pack down and regroup and try a different spot. And we ended up being in there. We ended up being back even further than I anticipated, and almost ran out of food. So opening morning, we found a couple bucks. Not in amazing spots to stalk them. We kind of made half a play, but then realized we're not going to be able to get across the hillside to even get stalk in on these bucks with the way that they're at. So we just backed out and watched them. I had scouted this unit for only a few days before this hunt because I already kind of knew the area. I knew where I wanted to go, and so I didn't scout a ton. I didn't have a ton of time to hunt to scout anyways. But I scouted a little bit, and I did find a couple really nice bucks that I wanted to go after. So the bucks that I found were kind of in a basin further back than we were at opening day, because I had scouted those bucks a couple of days before the hunt started, and one of them made their way over the backside, and so I figured if I could be on that backside opening day, probably turn him up. Raiden, my buddy, was actually on the front side of that mountain, and he was glassing that opening day. He didn't have a tag, but he just wanted to come up for fun and hang out, and he was glassing that front side. We were glassing the backside. Raiden didn't find any deer, and we found those couple bucks. Now, opening day the weather was terrible. It was windy. It was a huge storm came through. I was on Instagram, and like literally everyone in the whole state was getting pounded by rain and lightning, just crazy thunderstorms, super windy. And so we were just kind of battling out, but there was still deer out. We were still finding bucks. What was really nice is we were in a spot where I didn't see a single other hunter back there. I didn't see a single person with a bow in their hand the whole trip, which is unheard of for this unit because there's so many people that hunt it. But we were back in there a long ways. And opening day, found some bucks. So second day, weather was a little bit decent. We found the same bucks again. And I decided to move kind of closer, camp a little closer to the ridge line where the bucks cross over, because there was a couple basins on the front side and then one big basin on the back side. So if we kind of camp I figured we could kind of camp off to the side where nothing's going to get spooked off, and we would hike over and glass all the basins at the same time. So that's what we did for the next couple of days. I did ended up putting a stalk on the 2 bucks we saw on the back side of the basin. Blew them out at 50 yards. They totally saw me, but I didn't know at the time. I looked back through like the GoPro footage, and one of the bucks totally had me pinned, but I just didn't see him. I wasn't paying enough attention. They blew out at 50 yards. We never saw them again. I'm sure that they're still in that area, but we never did see them. But off the backside of the basin, we actually ended up finding the 2 big target bucks that I was after. That front side of the basin where those bucks had been hanging out. So over the next couple of days, we kind of just kept an eye on those basins, and the bucks would kind of move and bounce basins here and there, and we ended up finding one of the bucks that was one of my target bucks. He was a nice 4-point, a little bit crabby on the front, but he had awesome back forks, and he had a cheater off of one of his back forks. So he was a cool buck, one of the bigger bucks that I've ever hunted, and man, he was like the smartest buck I've ever hunted as well. In the morning, we would see him, and he'd be feeding in the morning. He'd make a couple beds. Like mid-morning, but he'd always have the wind in his favor. He'd be in the wide open where he could see everything. Nothing was going to get close to him, and he would never bed down for longer than probably 20 or 30 minutes, and then he'd get up and feed. And every single day, he would go bed in almost the exact same spot in this group of trees, and we would watch him come to that bed from different angles, different trails every day. There was kind of 2 main trails he would take. He would either feed in the basin in the morning and end up in the bottom of the basin and then work his way up into his bed, or he would feed in the basin and feed towards the top of the basin and work his way down to the bed. He kind of had 2 routes he would take, and I'm not exactly sure what made him take which route each day. If it was the wind or he would just switched it up every once in a while. Not sure, but he was a very patternable buck in a sense that he would hit that bed every single day, and almost exactly the same time too. 9:50 in the morning, that sun was already up. He would beeline it from wherever he was feeding straight to his bed, literally at the exact same time, like every day. It was insane how we watched this buck. I've never seen a mule deer buck do this before. So I was like, okay, this is a buck that we want to kill. How are we gonna kill him? While we were watching him, we did see another 4-point that was one of my target 4-points. There was really only those 2 bucks that I scouted before that I knew of. The other 4-point that was only a little bit smaller than this buck that had the pattern. He ended up bedding up almost at the top of the ridge in a perfect spot to stalk him. So I think this was day 4. I made a big loop around. The problem with this basin is it's super big. It's hard to find a lot of deer, or it's hard to get around to stalk in on deer. It's just such a long ways. But I made a big stalk on this buck and ended up getting into 40 yards on this buck. And I crept in. It was in a big rock field, and I had a rock between me and the deer the whole time. And I crept in. I could see his horn sticking above the rock when I peeked up. Crept into 40 yards. I ranged. The buck was at 40. And he was like snoozing. He was just sitting there. Had no idea I was there. I pulled back. I stood up. I made some noise at him. It's like meh, meh. And the buck stood up, but he took a few steps away from me, and he turned, and he was quartered away. And I had set my sight to 40 yards. The buck walked out to probably 45, and just enough to where I'm pretty sure he was just too far. I shot right underneath him. I like skimmed his leg. I just took like hairs off his leg, and the buck walked off like nothing happened. He just walked off and then into the trees, out of my sight, and we never saw him again. So bit of a bummer, because like it all worked out perfect. It was like the first successful stalk of the trip, The buck had no clue I was there, and I just missed him. It was tough. It was a tough miss because I was so close, and I just didn't capitalize on it. It was just totally my fault that we didn't kill that deer. But after that, we decided, all right, we have this 4-point down in the bottom that keeps bedding in the exact same spot. We called him the cheater buck because he had a cheater. We didn't really see any other bucks with cheaters. So we called this guy the cheater buck. He was probably 160 to 170 inch frame, so he wasn't a giant. He was the biggest buck we probably hunted at least or saw on the trip. And he had that cheater. So the cheater buck, we thought, all right, let's watch him all day tomorrow and watch what he does, get his pattern down again, and just really make sure that this is his pattern. So we watched him all day. He pretty much did exactly what we thought he would. He fed in the morning, made a couple beds, fed up from the bottom, went up the tree line, and then right into his bed. And then he was there all day. Come 5:30, 6 o'clock, he was out, he was feeding, and he just fed till dark. So the next morning, my buddy Riley came up to spend a few days with us. This is day 5, and day 5 of the hunt. This was the 7th day we were up there technically because we packed in the day before. So day 5 of the hunt, Riley comes up. Riley, we put him on top of the glassing knob, and me and Jamin kind of made a little play. So Jamin, he's a big whitetail guy, so he's hunted whitetail a lot of different ways, from tree stands, ambushed them, whatever. We decided, let's get the wind right, let's sneak all the way down to the bottom of the basin, come up, and let's camp out in this, right by this buck's bed. We'll wait for him to come up in the morning. If the wind's right, he should come right to us. We'll smoke him. Both of us felt pretty good about the plan. It was a long ways. It was about 2.5 miles from camp, or from the glassing knob, all the way down and around to where this buck was bedding. So it was a long ways. It was a long hike to get around to where the buck was at. So that's what we did. Early in the morning, Jamin and I hiked down. We got in his bed. For the last 2 days, we'd watched this buck come up from the bottom and along the tree line into his bed. And the night before, I saw the buck feed down towards the bottom of the basin, so I thought for sure this buck's going to come up from the bottom in the morning and he's going to bed. We got in there. Jamin posted up above the buck's bed with a good wind, and I came down through the buck's bed and along that tree line where I thought he was going to bed up. So Jamin couldn't see me, but Jamin was about 100 yards behind me on the other side of the steer's bed, on the top side, and I was on the bottom side. I waited there 9 o'clock, 9:30, 9:50. Buck didn't show. I didn't see him. I could see a lot of the basin. Never saw him. The wind was good the whole time. And so I was just like, dang, like, too bad. I don't know where the buck went. He must have just like seen us or smelled us or something. And he's not here. So I worked my way back up to Jamin. I get up to him, and Jamin's like, man, you should have been up here on the top side of the bed, because this buck came in from the top side this morning, and the buck fed literally 15 yards away from Jamin for like 40 minutes. Jamin has footage of it. He's got tons of video of this buck 15, 20 yards away from him for forever. And I had no clue. I was down 100 yards away just thinking this buck was gone. Ended up, that buck, as he started to move towards his bed, he caught my scent from where I walked down to get to the bottom side of his bed. Knew something was up. The buck turned around and just kind of trotted up the hill, and never saw him again too. But granted, we never really looked back in that basin a ton, because the next day is when I ended up killing my buck. But that was a bummer, because our plan worked really well, actually. We got in. If we just would have spotted the buck earlier and knew that he was coming from the top side of his bed, then we could have set up and got it done, but just didn't quite make it happen. So, bit of a bummer. on that buck. Smart, like super smart buck, and we actually basically outsmarted him. We just we weren't quite smart enough. So pretty cool. Pretty cool situation. Just to remember that like these bucks, they do their own thing, and they're patternable to a point, but they are not 100% patternable all the time. Especially those middle class bucks. I've heard things that older, like really really old bucks that can be super patternable, but a lot of the time mule deer are not. So it was okay though. Riley ended up glassing a couple groups of bucks in a totally different spot than we've been hunting the whole trip. So we decided to go over and check out that area that evening. We found a couple deer. We found a decent 4-point, and up in the top of this chute. So Jamin and I made a move on him. We got to about 150 yards, and the deer ended up seeing us, and I think the wind swirl, and they smelled us, took out. And it wasn't it was like a decent buck, so I wasn't really, I wasn't all that careful or sneaky about it. I just thought, well, if we can get close enough to this buck, it'd be awesome, and we just didn't quite make it work. But we did see a super funky 3x3 on that hillside that night that I did not spook out. He was in a different, he was just in the next little drainage over, next little chute over. And he was a regular 3-point on one side, but on the other side it was like a split main beam 3-point, kind of like weird looking dude. And I thought he was super cool. And I was like, well, I'd shoot that deer if I had the chance, but I just didn't have the chance that evening because we ended up trying to chase that 4-point. So the next morning, it's day 6, when Riley hiked in to hang out with us. He glassed up a super nice 3-point, probably 27 wide, just a nice, solid, good framed, straight 3-point, on the other side of the ridge that we were camping. So we decided to pack up real early in the morning, not the whole camp, we just packed all our day stuff. We popped over the ridge to see if we could find this 3-point. We glassed all morning, we didn't find him. We found a couple other bucks, but they were down in like the bottom of just a gnarly canyon or a big basin, and the wind wasn't right for them, so we just kind of left them. So we decided, Jamin and I, let's go back to where we saw that funky 3x3 the day before. Let's try to find him. He's in a decent spot. If he beds in a good spot, the wind will totally make it stalkable. And I'd be super happy with him. So we busted down off the ridge, went down to the canyon where we saw those bucks, and we hung out there for a while. Now, we had some like super crazy weather on this hunt. So this day was day 6, the afternoon. It was windy as windy could be. It was probably like 50-mile-an-hour gusts of wind. There was times where you'd have to the wind was ripping over the hill right next to us, and there was dust coming out, and you had to just like cover your eyes, otherwise you get dust all over your face. And there was a couple little rain squabbles that would come over us every once in a while, but they'd only last a minute or two each one, so they were just tiny. And one rain squall came over, and it hailed on us for a second, and we were sitting there in our rain gear just waiting for it to pass over. Soon as it passed over, I looked up, and literally like our same elevation, 600 yards across the canyon, I see 2 deer. Pulled the binos up, and there's a stud 3x4 who's just a solid buck, and he's with a little 2-point. So I'm thinking it's about 4 o'clock, or no, it's about 3:30. I'm like, okay, this is a buck I would definitely shoot. He's a nice buck. It's day 6, we only have like 2 days left in here, and we're basically out of food because I only brought 6 days of food. So I'm like, we kind of have to make something happen right here. I wasn't like super worried if we didn't make it happen. We still have a few more days to hunt, but I really wanted something to happen. So we watched them for a while. They ended up bedding down where we could see them in this patch of short pine trees in the middle of a clearing on a hillside. So the wind was coming up from the bottom of the canyon, blowing straight, like kind of diagonal across the hill. And these bucks bedded on the upwind side of this tree patch. So the wind was blowing from them, straight away from them to the other side of the tree patch. So I had a perfect stalk where I could work my way around, work in to the other side of the tree patch that they were bedded in, and the wind would be perfect, and they wouldn't see me because they're bedded down in these short pine trees. And the tree patch was probably only 30 yards across, so I could creep in. I'd be in total shooting distance. I would probably be able to get a shot if I could get in that close. And the wind was blowing so hard, I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried about the wind switching or swirling very much, and I wasn't really worried about them seeing me or hearing me. So it was 4 o'clock. Those bucks bedded. I just booked it. I booked it all the way down around. It was only 600 yards straight as the crow flies, but I probably had to go, 3/4 of a mile to get around to where these bucks were at. Threw the stocksins on, got the bow ready. I started creeping in. I got to the tree, the other side of the tree patch where it was about 30 yards away, but I could not see the deer. They were just bedded, and the topography is always different than you think it is going to be when you get over there. So couldn't see the bucks, but I knew they were there. Because Jamin had put through a game bag up, and if he took it down, I knew the deer were gone. So the deer were still there. I had 2 options at this point, and both of which I wasn't sure, but I was like, I'm just gonna send it on one of these options. I could either just wait there until those bucks got up and started feeding again. Could have been an hour, could have been 20 minutes, who knows how long it could have been. Or I could just kind of work my way around this tree patch until I could see them and hopefully get a shot in their bed, or have them stand up and I could shoot them. So I decided, instead of waiting with the wind being the way it was really windy, but it would kind of swirl a little bit. I decided I'm just going to work my way around until I can see them. So I worked around, probably got about 10 yards, 15 yards closer, and I looked around this pine tree and I could see the buck's antlers sticking out of the grass. And so I pulled back my bow behind the tree, took a step out behind the pine tree, made some noise at this buck. I made some cowlick sounds, just and I was stood there for probably like at least a minute, pulled back on this buck, and he finally, I made enough noise that he finally like turned around. It must have been just so windy he could barely hear. He turned around, he saw me, but he didn't quite know what I was, and I knew I was like 15 yards away, so I knew I was gonna smoke him as soon as he stood up, but I wanted to make sure he didn't run off. So he started standing up, and he was standing up fairly slowly, so as he was standing, I shot before he was totally up, and hit him. Just great shot, blood coming out straight away, and that buck literally went 20 yards, tipped over, and died right there. Coolest moment ever. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever done. Just killed something with my bow. Like, that was the 5th stalk of the trip that we were on. I'd hunted the whole year before, didn't get even close, and so just super cool that it all came together, and I was so excited. And it was only like 5 o'clock, so we had tons of daylight left. We took all our pictures we needed to. We cut them up, packed them up, and we only had about less than a mile back to camp, which was really cool. So packed them out to camp, slept there for the night, packed them out in the morning. We had heavy packs, super heavy packs, but we had basically a trail the whole way down back to the car. So awesome hunt. We got it all on film. So going to be working on making the film here over the next few weeks as I have time. We'll see how much time I have and how long it takes me, but I've already been working on it a little bit and kind of got it cut up into some chunks. So super stoked to share the video with you guys, but I kind of just wanted to share the story with you. And and just kind of some things that I learned along the way there. A few things we got coming up. I've got a couple hunts that I'm filming here in September. And I also have some school starting in September, so I'm going to be in school for the rest of the fall, actually for the rest of the year, but I graduate school a year from now, so next fall I'm going to have totally open, which will be really nice. I'm really excited to have a full fall season with no school and nothing else other than hunting and filming and just doing my thing. So pretty stoked, but school's going to start. Got some hunts to film in September. I've got, I'll probably do a general archery elk hunt just here at my home state. And then I've got a couple general tags for me throughout the season. My wife also has a awesome rifle elk tag that she's stoked about. She's never harvested anything other than turkey, so really excited for her to have that tag, and we're gonna hit it hard in October, and hopefully we can find her a nice bull. But other than that, guys, I just kind of wanted to make a quick little podcast for this week, and nothing too crazy. But next week we got a guest coming on, awesome guy. You guys are gonna be excited about it. And then I'm gonna record some more podcasts here in the next couple weeks after I'm done. But by the time this one comes out, which is I think gonna be in a couple days from when I'm recording this, I will be out on a film project. For that first week of September when this podcast comes out. And then once I'm back from that, pretty much school starts. So got a lot going on. Pretty stoked though. Still just going to keep everything up. Going to keep making these films, making videos as much as I can, and making these podcasts. So thanks you guys for listening. If you ever want to check anything out or support me, links down below are all my affiliate codes and links to gear that I use, and anything that's bought down there on the links I get a little cut of, which is awesome. I don't make much from it, but it's a little bit just to kind of help support my dream and this podcast and all my hunts and everything. So thanks guys for watching. Check out any of the other episodes if you've missed any, and we'll see you guys next week.